The chamber was massive, carved from a single piece of crystal that had taken 3,000 years to grow. 23 species sat in a circle, each representative perched on seats designed for their unique bodies. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few existed as pure energy contained in glass spheres. They were the Galactic Council, the oldest powers in known space, and they had ruled the stars for longer than human civilization had existed. Deho stood in the center of the circle, his plain gray suit a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and armor around him. He was a small figure in this vast room, but he stood straight and calm. His hair was starting to gray at the temples, and his hands bore the scars of his years working in the asteroid mines before he became a diplomat. He had requested this meeting 6 months ago. Today he would finally get his answer. Thalvex, the council speaker, rose from his seat. He was enormous, nearly 12 feet tall, with scales that shimmered like oil on water. His species had been traveling between stars when humans still lived in caves. His eyes, yellow and ancient, looked down at Deho with something between pity and contempt. "Human ambassador," Thalvex said, his voice booming through the chamber. "We have reviewed your petition for expansion rights into the Corvash expanse. The council has reached a unanimous decision." Deho waited. He had learned patience in the mines where rushing meant death. "Your request is denied," Thalvex continued. "Furthermore, the council advises humanity to abandon any plans related to the region you call the Void. It is forbidden territory for good reason." A hologram appeared above the chamber floor, showing a region of space that looked wrong. Stars flickered and died, nebulae twisted into impossible shapes. Space itself seemed to shimmer and tear like fabric caught in a storm. "The Corvash expanse is a dead zone," another council member said. "A being that looked like a cluster of floating crystals. Cosmic radiation there is 3,000 times higher than normal space. Gravitational anomalies tear ships apart. Dark matter storms make navigation impossible. It is a place where the laws of physics break down. 17 species have attempted to colonize the expanse over the past 10,000 years. Thalvex added. All failed, many died. Their wreckage still drifts there as a monument to arrogance. We denied their petitions too, but they went anyway. We will not allow humanity to make the same mistake." Deho listened to it all without expression. When they finished, he simply asked, "Is that your final position?" "It is," Thalvex said firmly. "Humanity has been in space for what? 600 years? You are children playing with tools you barely understand. The void is beyond you. It is beyond all of us. Accept this wisdom and focus on safer regions of expansion." "I see," Deho said quietly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip. "Then I am not here to request permission. I am here to inform you that humanity has already begun colonization of the Corvash expanse. We started 2 years ago." The chamber erupted. Council members shouted in a dozen different languages. Alarms began to sound. Thalvex slammed his massive fist on his seat, cracking the stone. "Impossible," he roared. "Our sensors show no human activity in that region." "Your sensors can barely penetrate the void's interference," Deho replied calmly. He held up the data chip. "We've learned to work with the chaos instead of fighting it. Would you like to see?" Thalvex wanted to refuse, but curiosity won. He gestured and the data chip was scanned. The hologram changed. The image showed a construction site floating in the heart of the Corvash expanse. But it was not small. It was enormous. A skeletal structure stretched across hundreds of miles, its shape organic and flowing rather than rigid. Hundreds of ships surrounded it, and thousands of tiny figures in spacesuits worked on its surface like ants building a colony. The design made no sense to the council members. The structure seemed to bend and flex, its framework adapting to the gravitational distortions around it. Modules were attached in seemingly random positions, but as they watched, they realized there was a pattern. The station was not fighting the void's chaos. It was dancing with it. "What is this madness?" a council member whispered. "We call it Nabi Station," Deho said. "It means butterfly. When complete, it will house 100,000 people. Construction is 40% complete. We expect to finish within 3 years." "You cannot survive there," Thalvex insisted. "The radiation alone would kill you in hours. The gravitational anomalies would tear your station apart. This is suicide." "We have survived there for 2 years," Deho replied. "Yes, we lose people. The work is dangerous, but we have developed shielding, genetic modifications, and medical treatments that allow us to live in conditions you consider impossible. We are not trying to tame the void. We are learning to become part of it. He touched the data chip again and the image zoomed in. The council saw humans working on the station's surface, surrounded by radiation that glowed like fire. They saw ships navigating through gravitational whirlpools that should have crushed them. They saw modules that bent and flexed with space itself, remaining intact through distortions that would shatter normal materials. And they saw something else. In one completed section of the station, through a transparent dome, they saw green, plants growing, and children playing in a garden suspended in the heart of hell. "You are mad," Thalvik said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Perhaps," Deho admitted, "but every species in this council told us what we could not do. You told us we could not leave our planet without destroying ourselves. You told us we could not travel faster than light. You told us we could not live on worlds without breathable atmospheres. You were wrong every time, not because you were stupid, but because you forgot something important." "And what is that?" Thalvex asked. Deho smiled. "Humanity does not accept that anywhere in this universe is off limits to life. You look at the void and see death. We look at it and see a challenge. You see impossibility. We see Tuesday." He turned to address the entire council. "I am not asking for your permission or your blessing. I am informing you of what we are doing because it is polite. But make no mistake, we are building cities in the void. We will live there. We will thrive there. And when we are done, we will have proven that the only true impossibility is accepting limits without testing them." The council sat in stunned silence. Finally, Thalvex spoke, his voice heavy. "You will fail. And when you do not come crying to us for rescue." "We will not fail," Deho said simply. "But if we do, we will save ourselves. We always have." He bowed respectfully and left the chamber. Behind him, the council members stared at the hologram of Nabi Station, watching it grow in the heart of space that should have been empty forever. They did not know it yet, but they were witnessing the beginning of something that would change the galaxy. Humanity had looked at the impossible and decided to build a neighborhood there instead. The construction pod shook as another gravitational wave passed through the area. Jiwan gripped his safety harness and waited for the shaking to stop. He had been working in the void for 18 months now, and he still was not used to it. The universe felt wrong here. Up and down changed without warning. Time seemed to move strangely, and the radiation that surrounded them glowed in colors that should not exist. "Wave passed," the pod's computer announced. "Resuming normal operations." Jiwan released his harness and floated to the window. Outside, Nabi Station stretched in all directions. It looked more like a living organism than a building. Metal beams curved and spiraled, following patterns that his engineering degree said were impossible. But they worked. Somehow they worked. His crew was already back at work, welding new sections into place. He could see dozens of other crews doing the same across the station's growing frame. They looked like fireflies in the darkness, their welding torches creating brief stars against the black. "Boss, we have a problem with Section 42. His radio crackled. It was Minji, one of his best welders. "The structural stress is higher than predicted." "The beam is bending." "Let it bend," Jiwan replied. He had learned this lesson the hard way. "Check the quantum sensors. If they show the bend is following the gravitational flow, leave it. The station is designed to move with the void, not against it." There was a pause. "The sensors show green. The bend is actually reducing stress on the connecting joints." "Then it is working correctly," Jiwan said. "Trust the design." He still found it hard to believe sometimes. They were building a city using chaos as a foundation. It went against everything he had learned in school. But Hijin had been right. The woman was a genius, even if her ideas seemed insane. Speaking of Hijin, she was supposed to arrive today. Jiwan checked his schedule and swore. She would be here in an hour, and he needed to prepare the demonstration site. He kicked off from the window and sailed through the pod to the exit. The journey through the station was strange. They had installed temporary corridors, but they followed the natural flows of gravity and radiation rather than straight lines. Walking through them felt like moving through a river with invisible currents. Jiwan had learned to read the flows, to let them carry him where he needed to go. New workers fought against them and exhausted themselves. Experienced workers danced with them. He reached the demonstration site just as Hyejin's shuttle docked. She emerged wearing a simple work suit, her gray hair tied back in a practical bun. She was 60 years old but moved like someone half that age. Her eyes, sharp and bright, took in everything. "Jiwan," she greeted him with a nod. "Show me, no pleasantries." That was Hijin. Jiwon led her to the array of gravitational anchors his team had installed according to her specifications. They looked like massive tuning forks made of a metal that seemed to shift colors in the void's light. "We installed all 50 anchors as you designed," Jiwon said. "But I have to be honest. I do not understand how they are supposed to work. They are not fighting the gravitational anomalies. They are not shielding us from them. What are they doing?" Hyejin smiled. "They are listening." She activated the array. The anchors began to hum, a sound that Jiwon felt in his bones rather than heard with his ears. The station around them seemed to respond. The random shaking that usually plagued the structure smoothed out. The gravitational distortions did not disappear, but they became predictable, regular, almost like a heartbeat. "The void is not our enemy," Hyejin explained. "It is music. Chaotic music, yes, but music nonetheless. These anchors are not fighting the chaos. They are finding the rhythm in it and teaching the station to move with that rhythm. Do you understand?" Jiwon stared at the readings on his datapad. The structural stress on the station had dropped by 40%. Energy consumption was down. The random equipment failures that plagued them daily had stopped. "It is working," he whispered. "It is actually working." "Of course it is working," Hyejin said. "I designed it." Over the next few days, Jiwon watched as Hyejin and her team installed anchor arrays throughout the growing station. Each one made life easier. The work became safer. Fewer people died. He began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could actually do this impossible thing. But then came the morning when his brother Minseo's crew missed their check-in. Jiwon felt his stomach drop. He immediately called the control center. "Where is Crew 7? Why have they not checked in?" "We lost their signal 20 minutes ago," the controller replied. "They were working on the outer ring when a dark matter storm appeared. We are trying to locate them now." Jiwon was already running to the shuttle bay. He grabbed an emergency pod and launched into the void. The dark matter storm was visible even without instruments, a churning mass of nothing that devoured light itself. He flew toward it, his heart pounding. He found them. The crew pod was tumbling through space, its systems dead. Through the window, he could see suited figures inside, unmoving. He docked his pod and forced the airlock open. Minseo was floating in the center of the pod, his suit breached. The dark matter had passed right through the hull, through his body. Jiwon grabbed his brother, knowing it was too late but unable to stop himself. The others in the crew were alive but unconscious, their suits barely holding. He got them all back to the station. The medical team tried, but Minseo was gone before they started. Jiwon sat in the viewing room, staring at his brother's body, and wondered what they were doing here. What was worth this? Hyejin found him there hours later. She sat beside him in silence for a long time. "I am sorry," she finally said. "We are losing people every day," Jiwon said quietly. "My brother is the 53rd person to die on this project." 53. Is this worth it? Building a city in hell? Hyejin looked at him with those sharp eyes. "Your brother knew the risks. They all do, and they choose to come anyway. Do you know why?" "Tell me," Jiwon said bitterly. "Because every species in the galaxy told us what we could not do," Hyejin said. "They told us the void was impossible, that nothing could live here, that we should accept our limitations and stay in safe space. But we refuse to accept that anywhere in this universe is off limits to life. Your brother died proving that wrong. That matters. Does it matter to him?" Jaejuan asked. "Yes," Hyejin said simply. "I knew him. He told me once that he wanted his children to grow up knowing that humanity could live anywhere, that no challenge was too big. He gave his life for that dream. Honor it by finishing what we started." Jiwon sat in silence, thinking about his brother's children back on Earth. They would grow up without their father, but maybe they would grow up in a universe where humanity had no limits. Maybe that was worth it. He stood up slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep building," Hyejin said. "We have work to do." The next morning, Jiwon was back at his post. The construction continued. More modules were attached. More systems came online. And slowly, impossibly, the station began to look less like a construction site and more like a home. 3 months later, the first residential section was completed. Jiwon stood at a viewing port and watched as families moved in. Children ran through corridors that should not exist, playing games in artificial gravity. A couple planted flowers in a garden surrounded by radiation that could kill them in seconds, protected only by shields that should not work. He thought about Minseo and the others who had died to build this place. They would never see it finished. But their children would, and their children's children. They would grow up here, in the heart of the impossible, and they would never know it was supposed to be impossible at all. Outside the viewing port, the void churned and twisted. But inside, humanity was building a home, and that made all the difference. 5 years had passed since the Galactic Council told humanity that nothing could live in the void. 5 years since Deho had shown them the impossible construction. Now Borum stood at the central plaza of Nabi Station and looked around at what her people had built. She was 17 years old and had never set foot on a planet. She was born here in the medical bay of Nabi Station, delivered by Dr. Kwan while gravitational waves made the equipment dance. Her parents said she came out screaming, angry at the universe for being so unstable. She had been angry at the void ever since, but it was home. The only home she knew. The plaza was crowded today. Merchants sold food from stalls that floated on anti-gravity platforms. Artists displayed paintings made with bioluminescent radiation, colors that could not exist anywhere else. Children played a game called Void Ball, where they threw spheres through changing gravity fields and tried to predict where they would go. Music echoed from a dozen different cafes, human songs mixed with alien melodies from the few non-human residents who had dared to visit. Nabi Station was no longer a construction site. It was a city. 50,000 people called it home, and it was not alone anymore. 3 more void cities were being built in other parts of the Korvash expanse. Soon there would be more. Borum! Her friend Yuna called. Come on, we will be late. Borum hurried over. Today they were taking a visiting alien on a tour of the station. His name was Vren, and he was from something called the Galactic Council. He was an insectoid with 4 arms and compound eyes that made Borum uncomfortable, but he had been polite so far, even if he looked at everything like he expected it to explode. They found Vren at the docking bay, standing perfectly still and staring at the organized chaos around him. Ships came and went constantly. Cargo was loaded and unloaded. Workers moved through the space with practiced ease, riding the gravity currents like surfers on waves. Agent Vren, Borum greeted him formally. Welcome to Nabi Station. I am Borum, and this is Yuna. We will be your guides today. Thank you, Vren said in his clicking voice. I must admit, I am surprised to still be alive. The Council's data suggested that your station should have collapsed years ago. The Council's data was wrong, Yuna said cheerfully. Happens a lot, apparently. Borum shot her a look. They were supposed to be diplomatic. The Council's models assumed we would fight the Void's chaos. We do not, we work with it. Would you like to see how? She led Vren through the station, showing him the gravitational anchors that hummed their constant rhythm, the radiation gardens where plants grew in impossible colors, the residential sectors where families lived comfortable lives. She showed him the schools where children learned math by calculating gravitational flows, the hospitals where doctors treated injuries that could only happen in the void, the theaters where performers used variable gravity as part of their art. Vren said nothing for most of the tour. He simply observed with his compound eyes, taking notes on a device that floated beside him. But Borum could sense his confusion. He had expected desperate survivors clinging to life. Instead, he found a thriving community. This sector was completed last year, Borum explained as they entered a new neighborhood. It houses about 3,000 people. We have apartments, shops, a school, and a community center. Everything a neighborhood needs. But how do you handle the radiation? Vren finally asked. Our instruments show levels that should be lethal. They are lethal, Borum said simply. Outside our shielding, we would die in minutes. But we have adapted. Genetic modifications, cybernetic enhancements, medical treatments. Some of us were born with these adaptations. We are not quite the same as humans who live in normal space anymore. We are void humans, she said it with pride. She knew some people from Earth looked at void humans as mutants, as something less than pure. But she did not care. She could survive in places they could not even imagine. They stopped at a cafe, and Borum ordered drinks. Vren looked at the menu with confusion. What is void berry? He asked. A plant we engineered to grow in high radiation, Yuna explained. It tastes like nothing else in the galaxy, because it literally cannot grow anywhere else in the galaxy. Vren tried the drink cautiously. His antenna twitched. It is interesting. While they drank, a merchant captain named Taijin entered the cafe. Borum knew him. He ran one of the largest shipping operations between the Void Cities and human core worlds. His ship could navigate the Korvash expanse better than anyone. Boram, Yuna, Taijin nodded to them. Then noticed Vren. And a council observer. Welcome. I hope the children are not filling your head with too much propaganda about how wonderful it is to live in a death zone. It is not propaganda if it is true, Yuna said. Taijin laughed and sat down. Agent Vren, I have news you might find interesting. The council has been discussing your people's observations. Apparently 4 species have lodged formal complaints about our presence here. What kind of complaints? Borum asked. They claim we are destabilizing the region, Taijin said. They say our cities are causing gravitational disturbances that affect nearby systems. They want the council to force us to leave. Vren shifted uncomfortably. I cannot comment on council proceedings. Of course not, Taijin said easily. But you might want to mention in your report that we are not destabilizing anything. In fact, our research team just made a breakthrough. We have learned how to harvest dark matter as an energy source. The Void Cities will soon generate more power than entire planets. That is probably what really bothers the council. We are not just surviving here. We are becoming powerful. Vren's antenna twitched rapidly. Borum recognized it as a sign of agitation. You can harvest dark matter? That is theoretically impossible. So is living in the void, Yuna pointed out. Yet here we are, drinking void berry juice and having a pleasant conversation. After Taijin left, Borum led Vren to the central observation deck. It was a massive dome of transparent aluminum that looked out into the void. The view was spectacular and terrifying. Radiation storms flowed past like rivers of light. Gravitational eddies warped space into impossible shapes. Dark matter currents moved through it all like invisible serpents. And in the middle of it, human cities floated serenely, their light steady and warm against the chaos. I do not understand, Vren said quietly. How can you live like this? How can you look at that, he gestured at the churning void, and call it home? Borum considered the question. She had been asked it before by visitors from Earth who could not imagine growing up here. Because it is beautiful, she finally said. You see death out there. I see where I was born. I see my friends, my family, my entire life. This is not hell to me. This is just Tuesday. But the danger, Vren insisted. The constant risk. Life is risk, Borum said. On Earth, people die in accidents, from disease, from natural disasters. Here, the dangers are different but not greater. We have learned to live with them. And in return, we have something no one else in the galaxy has. We have proven that nowhere is off limits. No challenge is too great. No environment too hostile. If we can live here, we can live anywhere. Vren was silent for a long time, staring out at the void. Finally, he spoke. The council will issue an ultimatum soon. 6 months to evacuate or face sanctions and possible blockade. What will you do? We will refuse, Borum said simply. This is our home. No one can make us leave, then even if they send fleets. Even then, Borum said. She looked at Vren directly. Your council has been wrong about us from the beginning. You were wrong when you said we could not survive here. You were wrong when you said we could not thrive here. You will be wrong when you think you can force us to leave. Vren's antenna drooped. I believe you, he said quietly, and I think the council is making a terrible mistake. Then tell them, Borum said.
Tell them what you saw here.
Tell them we are not going anywhere. That night, Borum stood at her apartment window and looked out at Nabi Station. 50,000 lights in the darkness. 50,000 people who had chosen the impossible. And somewhere out there, 3 more cities being built. Soon there would be more. The void was becoming home for humanity. The galaxy had told them it could not be done. They had done it anyway, and now the galaxy wanted them to leave. Borum smiled grimly. They had no idea how stubborn void humans could be. Let them try to make us leave, she thought. We were born in the impossible. We thrive in it. This is our home, and we will defend it. The ultimatum arrived exactly when Vren said it would. 6 months to evacuate all void cities, or face sanctions and military enforcement. The Galactic Council framed it as mercy, as saving humanity from itself. But Deho knew the truth. The council was afraid. He stood in his office on Earth looking at the official document on his screen. Behind him, the world's leaders had gathered for an emergency meeting. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Would humanity back down? Ambassador Deho, the Prime Minister asked. What is your recommendation? Deho turned to face the room. He was 70 now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still sharp. We refuse. Completely and absolutely. The Void Cities are ours. We will not abandon them. The Council is threatening military action, a general said. They have ships, weapons. Can we defend ourselves? We will not need to, Yejin said from her video link. She was on Nabi Station, coordinating the response from there. We have something better than weapons. We have the Void itself. Over the next 6 months, the Void Cities prepared, not for war, but for resistance. Yejin worked day and night with teams across all 4 cities, fine-tuning the gravitational anchor networks, perfecting their control over the dark matter flows. They were not building weapons. They were learning to conduct a symphony. Jiwan, now gray-haired and scarred from years in the Void, trained civilian defense volunteers. Not in combat, but in emergency procedures, how to seal sectors, how to maintain life support under crisis, how to evacuate if necessary, though no one believed they would need to. Borum became a symbol. She gave speeches that were broadcast across human space and beyond. Her message was simple and powerful. We were born here. The Void is not our prison. It is our home. We did not conquer this place. We became part of it, and no one, not even the Galactic Council, can take that away from us. The deadline passed. The evacuation order was ignored, and the Council fleet arrived. They came in force. 300 ships representing a dozen different species. They positioned themselves around Nabi Station, their weapons powered down but ready. They broadcast a message to all frequencies. This is Council Enforcement Fleet. You have violated the evacuation order. We are here to assist in your safe departure. Please prepare to abandon the station in an orderly fashion. This is for your own protection. Daiho, who had traveled to Nabi Station for this moment, sent the reply. This is Ambassador Deho of Humanity. We decline your assistance. We will not be leaving. This is our home. There was a long pause. Then a new voice came over the channel. Thalvex himself, the council speaker. Ambassador, please be reasonable. We do not want casualties, but we have the authority to enforce this evacuation by any means necessary. Then you will have to drag 50,000 people out by force, Deho replied calmly, and explain to the galaxy why you attacked civilians living peacefully in their own homes. Good luck with that. The fleet began to move closer, trying to intimidate. Their ships surrounded the station from all angles. It should have worked. 50,000 civilians against 300 warships. But something strange started to happen. The fleet's navigation systems began to malfunction. Ships that were moving in perfect formation suddenly found themselves drifting off course. Gravitational readings went crazy. Sensors showed anomalies that should not exist. Captains tried to correct, but their ships would not respond properly. On Nabi Station, Yejin stood at the central control room, her hands moving across holographic displays. Around her, Soman and a team of physicists monitored thousands of data streams. The gravitational anchors across all 4 Void Cities were humming in perfect harmony. Their rhythm synchronized to a plan that had taken months to perfect. Increase field intensity by 5%, Hyejin ordered. Target vectors 7 through 12. The team adjusted their controls. In space around the fleet, invisible currents of gravity began to flow in carefully choreographed patterns. The Void had always been chaotic, its gravitational anomalies random and deadly, but humanity had learned to read the chaos, to understand its patterns, and now for the first time they were conducting it like music. Ships in the Council fleet began to drift helplessly. Not violently, not dangerously, but precisely. They were caught in gravitational currents that flowed exactly where Hyejin wanted them to flow. She was using the Void itself as a tool, moving the fleet like pieces on a board. This is impossible, a fleet captain broadcast. What are you doing to our ships? We are doing nothing, Deho replied. You chose to enter the Void is dangerous. We tried to warn you. Dr. Kwan's medical teams were already launching rescue shuttles. They moved through the gravitational currents with practiced ease, riding the flows that were trapping the Council ships. They docked with disabled vessels and offered assistance. This is Nabi Station Medical, Kwan broadcast to the fleet. We detect that several of your ships have crew members suffering from Void exposure. We are sending medical teams to assist. Please do not resist. We are here to help. It was surreal. The Council fleet had come to enforce an evacuation, and now humanity was rescuing them from the environment they had been warned about. Thalvex watched it all from his flagship, his ancient eyes wide with disbelief. How? He whispered. How are they doing this? Fren, who was aboard as an observer, answered quietly. They are not fighting the void, Speaker. They have become part of it. They understand it in ways we never will. This is their home. We are the invaders here. For 3 days, the fleet remained trapped in carefully controlled gravitational currents. Not one shot was fired. Not one person was hurt. Humanity simply held them there, demonstrating mastery over an environment that was supposed to be unlivable. Finally, Thalvex contacted Deho directly on a private channel. You have made your point, Ambassador, the ancient alien said. His voice was tired, lacking its usual authority. We underestimated you. Again. You underestimated what we could achieve when we refused to accept limitations, Deho replied. You told us nothing could live in the void. We proved you wrong. You told us to leave. We refused. You sent a fleet to force us. We stopped you without firing a single shot. When will you learn that humanity does not bow to impossible? What do you want? Thalvex asked. Recognition, Deho said simply. Acknowledge that the void territories belong to humanity. Acknowledge our right to live here. That is all we have ever wanted. There was a long silence. Then Thalvex spoke again. The council will need to deliberate. But I believe you will get your recognition. You have earned it, though not in any way we expected. We rarely do things the expected way, Deho said with a slight smile. The fleet was released from the gravitational currents and withdrew. As they left, they passed close to Nabi Station. Through their viewing ports, alien crew members looked at the city floating impossibly in the chaos. They saw lights in windows, gardens behind transparent domes, children playing in plazas. Normal life in the heart of hell. Borum stood at the observation deck watching the fleet leave. Around her, thousands of void citizens had gathered to witness this moment. When the last ship disappeared, a cheer erupted that shook the station. They had won. Not through violence, but through stubborn determination to live where life should not exist. Jiwan found her in the crowd. The old construction foreman had tears in his eyes. We did it, he said. Your generation will grow up free. No one will question your right to be here. My brother would have been proud, he added quietly. Borum nodded. She thought about all the people who had died building these cities. The workers who had fallen. The pioneers who had sacrificed everything. They had made this moment possible. That night, Hijin gave a speech to all 4 void cities. Her hair was completely white now, and age had finally caught up with her. But her voice was still strong. Today we proved something important. We proved that the limits others place on us are meaningless if we refuse to accept them. The council said nothing could live in the void. They were wrong. They said we had to leave. They were wrong. They sent ships to force us, and they learned that you cannot force people to abandon their home. She paused, looking out at the thousands of faces watching her broadcast. This is just the beginning. There will be more challenges, more people who tell us what we cannot do. But we will keep proving them wrong. Because that is what humanity does. We look at the impossible and we ask, why not? The cheers that followed could be heard across all 4 cities. In the heart of the void, where nothing should live, humanity celebrated their victory, not over the council, but over the idea that any place in the universe was beyond the reach of life. Deho stood at a window, watching the celebration, and allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. Against all odds, against the wisdom of species far older, against the laws of nature themselves. Humanity had built cities in the void, and they were just getting started. 10 years after the blockade incident, the Korvash expanse had a new name. Everyone called it the Void Territories now, and it was no longer forbidden space. It was home to 2 million people spread across 17 cities, each one a miracle of engineering and human stubbornness. Borum stood at the arrival gate of Nabi Station, waiting for a very special visitor. She was 27 now, an official ambassador for the Void Territories. Her role was to help new species learn what humanity had learned about living in impossible places. Today she would meet her first student. His name was Minho, and he was a Keltharian. His species looked vaguely like large otters that walked on 2 legs with thick fur and intelligent eyes. He stepped off the transport looking nervous, clutching a bag of equipment to his chest. Ambassador Borum? He asked in careful human language. Just Borum is fine, she said warmly. Welcome to Nabi Station. I know the journey through the void can be rough for first-timers.
How are you feeling?
Terrified, Minho admitted. My instruments showed radiation levels that should have killed me 6 times over. The gravitational readings made no sense, and the transport pilot seemed to be flying drunk. Borum laughed. The pilot was riding the gravitational currents. It looks random, but it is actually the safest way to travel here. You will understand soon. Come, let me show you what we have built. As they walked through Nabi Station, Minho's terror slowly transformed into wonder. He saw things that should not exist. Markets where vendors sold goods in variable gravity, making everything float and spin in carefully controlled patterns. Art galleries displaying sculptures made from crystallized radiation. Parks where children played games that used the void's natural chaos as part of the rules. Your people sent me here to learn, Minho said as they sat in a cafe overlooking the main plaza. Our sun is dying. We need to relocate our civilization to a nebula region that every scientist says is uninhabitable. Radiation too high, gravitational instabilities, dark matter storms. Sound familiar? Very familiar, Borum said. That is exactly what they said about the void. So how do we do it? Minho asked desperately. How do we survive in a place that wants to kill us? You stop thinking of it as a place that wants to kill you, Borum said. The void does not care about us. It is not hostile or friendly. It simply is. The radiation, the gravity, the chaos, they are just natural forces. We learn to work with them instead of against them. Over the next few weeks, Borum gave Minho a complete education in void survival. She showed him the gravitational anchor technology that turned chaos into rhythm. She introduced him to Somin, who explained how dark matter could be harvested for energy instead of feared. She took him to meet Dr. Kwan, who shared decades of medical research on adapting human biology to extreme environments. But most importantly, she showed him the people, families who had lived in the void for generations, children who had never known any other home, artists who used the unique properties of the environment to create impossible beauty, workers who had learned to dance with gravitational currents the way sailors learned to read the wind. Your people evolved in the void, Minho observed one day. I can see it. You move differently. Think differently. You are not quite the same as other humans. We are void humans, Borum agreed. We adapted, genetically, cybernetically, culturally. But that is not a bad thing. Evolution is not about being better. It is about being suited to your environment. We are suited to the void. Your people can become suited to your nebula. One afternoon, Borum took Minho to visit Hyejin. The old woman was 90 now, living in a quiet apartment near the original construction site of Nabi Station. Her body was frail, but her mind was still sharp as ever. So you are the young one who needs to learn the impossible, Hyejin said, looking at Minho with those keen eyes. What is your biggest fear about your nebula? That we will fail, Minho said honestly. That we will lose people. That the sacrifice will be too great. You will lose people, Hyejin said bluntly. We lost 53 people building just this one station. Thousands died across all the void cities. The work is dangerous. The environment is hostile. People will sacrifice everything. Minho looked devastated, but Hyejin was not finished. But you will also create something magnificent. You will prove that your species can overcome any challenge. You will build cities where others said nothing could exist. And generations from now, children will be born in those cities who never knew it was supposed to be impossible. That is worth the sacrifice, she leaned forward. Do you know what the real secret is? It is not the technology. It is not the genetic modifications. It is the refusal to accept that any place in this universe is off limits to life. The moment you truly believe that, the moment you commit to making the impossible happen, you have already won half the battle. After they left Hyejin's apartment, Borum took Minho to the central observation deck. It was late in the station's day cycle, and the plaza was mostly empty. They stood at the massive window and looked out at the void. It was beautiful in its terror. Radiation storms flowed like auroras of impossible colors. Gravitational eddies made space itself twist into shapes that hurt to look at. Dark matter currents moved like rivers of pure nothing, devouring light and matter equally. And through it all, 17 human cities floated serenely, their light steady against the chaos. I used to be afraid of this view, Borum admitted. When I was young, I would have nightmares about the station failing, about being exposed to the raw void. But over time, I learned to see the beauty in it. This is not hell. It is just nature being more dramatic than usual. How do I help my people see that? Minho asked. You show them what humanity showed the galaxy, Borum said. You prove it can be done. You build one station, then one city, then many cities. You let children be born there who grow up thinking the impossible is normal. And slowly your entire species will transform. Not because you conquered your nebula, but because you learned to live as part of it. The next morning they went to the newest section of Nabi Station, currently under construction. Tejan was there, overseeing the installation of new docking facilities. The old merchant captain was wealthy now, his shipping consortium one of the most successful in human space. But he still came to the construction sites, checking on the work personally. Ambassador Borum, he greeted her. And this must be our Keltharian friend. Come to see how we build miracles? Something like that, Minho said. Tejan showed them around the construction site. It was chaos. Workers flew through space on jetpacks. Robots welded beams that bent and flexed in gravitational currents. Supply ships dodged around each other in patterns that looked random, but were precisely calculated. This is how we do it, Tejan explained. We accept the chaos. We work with it. That beam there is bending because gravity is pulling it. A traditional engineer would say it is a structural failure. We say it is working as designed. The bend distributes stress. It makes the structure stronger, not weaker. But how do you calculate that? Minho asked, pointing at his scanner. The gravitational forces change constantly. We do not calculate it, Tejan said with a grin. We feel it. After years in the void, you develop an instinct for the flows. The mathematics come later, to explain what we already know works. That is the real secret. We learn to trust our experience over our theories. On Minho's last day at Nabi Station, Borum took him to meet a group of school children. They were young, between 6 and 10 years old. All of them had been born in the void. Class, this is Minho, Borum introduced him. He is from a species called the Keltharians. His people need to move to a dangerous place, and he came here to learn how we survive in the void. Can anyone tell him what the most important thing is? A small girl raised her hand. You have to not be scared. You have to work together, a boy added. You have to respect the void, another girl said. It is not mean. It is just strong. Like the ocean. Minho listened to them, tears forming in his eyes. These children spoke about surviving in impossible conditions the way children on other worlds talked about going to the park. It was just normal life to them. After the class, Borum and Minho sat on a bench in one of the station's gardens. Plants grew around them in colors that did not exist in normal space, fed by radiation that should kill them. I think I understand now, Minho said quietly. It is not about the technology. It is about the mindset. Your people looked at the impossible and refused to be stopped. They paid a terrible price, but they never gave up. And now you have this. He gestured at the city around them. Exactly, Borum said. Will you go back and help your people do the same? Yes, Minho said firmly. We will need your technology, your designs, your expertise. But more than that, we will need your attitude. The belief that nowhere is off limits. That any challenge can be overcome if we refuse to quit. That evening, Borum stood at her usual spot on the observation deck and watched Minho's transport depart. It rode the gravitational currents expertly, the pilot having taught Minho the basics of void navigation. He would return to his people and share what he had learned. And maybe in a few years there would be Keltharian cities in their deadly nebula. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had proven that the impossible was just a challenge waiting to be overcome.